Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second edition of this genre writing workshop. Um, I am your host. I'm your only host. The only one going to be here. I'm Michael Morisi, and welcome. Thanks for being here. We are on day 700 of the shelter in place. Just kidding. It's obviously hasn't been that long. It feels kind of that long. I actually have two young kids, so it feels like we've been here for a while. But anyway, all is well here, and I hope things are going well for all of you too. Thanks for joining me, and I'm just going to dive right in to today's lesson because if I don't, I tend to kind of like I go. So for today's lesson, I want to talk about. I'm actually going to address a question that I was asked based on in the comments of the first video where I talked about world building, and I'll include the link to the video if you haven't seen that, and I give more of an introduction to who I am there and what this is all about. I'm not going to recap here because it'll just take time. So anyway, the question that I was asked, and I think it's a really good one. That's why I want to get to it right away. But the question I was asked was, when do you know that it's time to write? Meaning, when do you know when you can transition from like the planning, outlining, ideating, sketching stage and go into like actual like page one, chapter one, like I am now committed to this project and I'm starting it and I'm going, right? Um, and it's a really good question, and it really made me think about the process, and I'm like, when do I make that decision? So I'd really kind of sit back and consider that, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was a worthwhile thing to discuss. On this. Mileage is going to vary, like anything with writing. Writing, unfortunately, is not math. It's not science. It's always going to be whatever methods work for you, and you ask 100 different writers, you'll get 100 different answers. I don't suggest talking to 100 different writers. We're all nuts. So speaking of social distancing, um, but but this is what works for me. Mileage may vary. So yeah, let's just hop to it. Like I said, I'm trying to make these videos like 5 to 10 minutes. We'll see. But anyway, so I got to thinking about this idea. Like, when is it time to start actually, putting that pen to paper for the earnest beginning? You're not just thinking about it anymore. You're doing it. And there's a difference. I think there's a fundamental question that, for me, that when I am deciding to make that transition to really really start, there's a fundamental question I have to answer, and I think this is a question that often gets confused when you're doing this, when you're looking at a story. It's the question that divides what happens and what is this about, and those two things are not the same question. They're not the same thing. What happens and what the story are about are two very different things. Now, I start when I know what this is about. Let me explain. So, I brought some visual aids today. You can tell I'm really prepared. I'm really stepping up my game. But I brought some visual aids. These are my some of my notebooks that I write in. This one is from Alchemy. Oh, I'm turning it the wrong way. You can see it there. It's a little notebook, which is actually perfect because I write very very small. Like, look, if anybody wanted to, I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to like steal my ideas and you're like, I'm gonna break into Maurice's house and steal his notebooks, and good luck. You can. You're never gonna read it. Nobody can. I barely can. I look at this and I'm like, I'm not sure. It's a T. I can read it for the most part. But anyway, so this is a notebook. This is something that one of the notebooks. I have a few. Actually, I'll show you this one. This. I like this one. I'm just gonna make a point. This is my Star Wars notebook. It's pretty. I'm gonna back it up so you can see it better. It's pretty sweet. That's where I write my Star Wars stuff. This notebook, I'm working on this new YA horror novel that I've been working on in earnest now for a few months. I finally have had time to get to a new novel, thankfully. And when I got asked the question, when do I start writing? I went back and looked at these notebooks, and as I pieced through it, one of the things I really started, that I really focused in on when I was doing this was the characters. When I was starting this YA novel, which I'm not going to reveal the name of or anything like that, I'm going to just in case. Um, but I knew it was a character-driven story. So when I was writing these notes, I wasn't as concerned about like I had the premise. And let me start there. I think that when you are pursuing an idea, and look, as a writer, as a creative person, I'm certain you have a lot of ideas. We all have a lot of ideas. And that's kind of challenging because you have to be judicious about what ideas you pursue and what ideas you don't. So part of the process of like this, of taking the notes and really, really going deeper from like premise and beyond is to know, is there anything there? And I think that's what the question answers, the what is this about? So let's get to that. As I was writing this notebook and like writing in this notebook and familiarizing myself, I had the premise. I had the basic premise of like, here's this nugget of this idea. This is a premise, like sort of what happens, sort of the plot, sort of the setting. Those things are a little bit formed. They're kind of taking shape, and they could take more shape if you dedicate more time to them. But what you start with, more times than not, is a premise. You can couch this whatever way you want. The what if, what if this and this? What if this meant that? What if this person got put in this situation, etc. There's a number of ways to describe it, but what we're talking about is a basic premise. And that's where I would say most stories, most ideas begin. So I had that. And I knew based on the premise and knew that it was going to be again, a character driven thing. So as I'm writing this notebook and I was going back and I'm looking at it and I'm writing, character by character, there's four teenagers, and I'm writing who they are, where they're at in their lives when the story begins, where they're going to go, what motivates them, what they want. And we're going to talk about more stuff. I'll do a character video down the road, but I'm doing all this stuff. But what I found interesting is that in like the kind of like little asides, and I'll break out from the talking about a character, there's all these notes that ultimately lead me to what this story is about. And I can tell you what it's about, because that's the thing that really kind of broke it open for me. That's when I was like, this is the thing. This is a story that I can write because I know what it's about. It's not just a premise. It's not just some characters. It's not some, basically vague world building, whatever. Has a beating heart. And the story for me, what I discovered, this story is about, horror. I often find, and I can talk about this in another video, horror I often find is a metaphor for something else. It has to be. That's the power of horror. And for this, I discovered that horror is a metaphor for being poor. That the idea that driving the story, what it's about, is that there's scarier things in life than the boogeyman. Having no options, having no future, trying to get out of a place that is again poverty, poor. It's something that's really personal to me. I come from the South Side of Chicago, and I've seen that life. I sort of experienced it, I guess, in a way, not as bad as some, but it's always been a personal lens for me in which I view the world. So once I knew what the story was about, I was able to start running. I'll give you some more examples, and I have more visual aids. Isn't this exciting? So if you guys are familiar with this one, this is Wasted Space. I'm going to have to get used to the camera, how it's shifted. Okay, this is Wasted Space. This is my Vault Comics ongoing comic series. So I had a premise that I started off with. The premise was like Billy Bane is this guy who used to be like the mouthpiece of this supposed god, and he led the world into complete ruin and decimation. And the story picks up, years later when he's trying to find redemption. That's a premise. That's an idea, What it's about, though, what really cracked that idea open was that it became a story about how to be moral and happy in a world where morality and happiness are really, really hard to achieve. That was what the story was about. It gave it something more to constantly draw on to make the story as rich and as powerful and as potent as possible. And I think that once you determine that, once you determine what your story is about, you will be able to get so much more mileage and discover so many more things. I think you start at that top level, that the premise. You start there. That's the nugget of idea. And it's the process of burrowing and drilling down and down and down through characters, through setting, where does it take place? Why does it take place here? When? Why now? Why is a story has to be told now? Like, what is it that is important about the time stamp of this story? Like, what does it mean? What does it matter? What is it about? And if you can keep going down and down and down and get to that point, then you have something worth pursuing. Then you have something that you can dedicate those long hours, that arduous, challenging task of writing a screenplay, a comic script, a novel, whatever. I mentioned in the previous class the tapestry, a story tapestry, and I'll mention a stick to this thing forever. But if you're looking at the story, the tapestry of a story, and you have world building, you have character, you have setting, you have plot, you have themes. This is what it's about, is sort of the theme, I guess you can say. But the thread that keeps those things together is what it is about. That is what will tie together character, setting, place, etc., all those things together, because they need, again, to be working in unison. And the best way to keep your story in unison and so tight is to know fundamentally what it is. That's, again, the Waste of Space example. I can talk about the plot as well in my Vault Comics series. Like, it was a haunted house story that became a story about mental illness and grief. That's what it's really about. Yeah, it's a haunted house story, and we try to do our best to tell a haunted house story. But at the end of the day, for me, the plot is about mental illness, inherited mental illness, and grief. So, if I had an assignment for you, as we wrap this up, we're going on 12 minutes. I knew I couldn't get in 10. But think of your favorite stories. Think of the stuff that you love, and ask yourself, what is this about? Like, I'm in the process of rereading Stephen King's It. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge, huge King fan. And that story is about, it's about a lot of things. It's about, Pennywise, not what it's about, but what it is about, about Pennywise, a cosmic turtle, I guess. I don't know, it gets weird. It's like 1,000 pages. This weird stuff's going to happen. But what it's about, though, is about the Losers Club. It's about these 4 or 6. I'm reading it right now. I can't remember. I think it's 6 friends. I don't know. 2 of them are like basically the same. But like, it's about these friends, and it's about the transition from childhood to adulthood. It's about the things you lose. Not just innocence, but friendships and a sense of place and home and belonging and roots and stuff like that. It's about so many profoundly simple but profound things. And King had to know that when he set out to write this. Yes, there's also Pennywise. Yes, there's weird cosmic stuff. It has all those things, and they're awesome. I love them. I love that novel. I'm reading it. I think it's one of the greatest American novels ever written. But without that, what is it about? Without the Losers Club, and without everything that King was doing with that story, it wouldn't be nearly as powerful. It wouldn't be nearly as potent. So as you're thinking about stuff this week and whatever, think about stories. Think about what they're about and what it means to you, and what the stories are about, and how it's made an impact on you, and what the power is. So that's it for this week. I feel like I had something else to. Oh yeah. Don't forget, subscribe, leave comments below if there's something. Like I said, this video was born out of a question that was asked from the previous video. So if there's stuff that you want me to tackle, to talk about, if there's resources that you think I can share that would be cool, feel free, please, comment below. We can have a conversation. I'm doing this for you guys, for all of us. I mean, I get a kick out of this. I love talking writing. It motivates me. It makes me happy. And I hope it does the same for you. So go ahead, leave comments, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Everybody stay safe out there. Stay socially isolated, please. For real. All right. See you next time. Bye.